done this for about almost 3 to 4 years now with the rotating cast, although recently I've found a group of people who I really vibe with and really know what they're talking about, and this is going to be the way it's going to be for quite some time. So you guys, you're in for something special. What makes this panel different than all the hundreds of writers panels out there is that you're going to get the truth about how to break in from us. You're not going to get a bunch of people telling stories about their personal lives that have nothing to do with writing. We're not going to talk about in-jokes within the industry. We're going to tell you exactly what we had to do to get from point A to point B. And all of us have various levels of success. So, as a disclaimer, I say this all the time, nothing we say here today is meant to discourage you by any stretch of the imagination, but we do want you to be aware of what's out there. The best analogy I give is that if you were going to Afghanistan as a soldier, you want to know where the landmines are. You don't want to think it's like the land of Oz. So with that being said, let us begin. So, who do we have here? First person to be introduced is Erica Alexander. She has starring roles on The Cosby Show as Cousin Pam and as lawyer extraordinaire Maxine Shaw on the classic Fox sitcom Living Single. She and her husband Tony Perrier have created Concrete Park, a sci-fi comic series released by Dark Horse. Erica wrote a spec episode of AMC's Mad Men that actually included black people. Her most recent work was on the TV series Low Winter Sun that was on AMC that co-starred Mark Strong, who you may remember as Sinestro from the Dune Green Lantern film. Now, at the very end, the man in black and the man in the black hat is Hannibal Taboo, a columnist at Comic Book Research. Each week he infuriates fanboys with his review page called The Buy Pile. It is fantastic, and he will tell you what's worth your money and, quite frankly, what is not. He is the winner of the 2012 Top Cow Talent Hunt for Writers, and his work was featured most recently in the Top Cow series Artifacts number 35. He's also doing 4 issues of Project Wildfire for Legends Press, and he's working on the Watson and Holmes series from New Paradigm Studios along with Stephen Grant, and that'll be issue 7 coming sometime soon. So let's give him a welcome. And the first time he's on. Next to Hannibal is Tony Perrier, who is well known for the script to the Schwarzenegger film Eraser from 1996. He's also known for developing the graphic novel Concrete Park. Mr. Perrier was accepted into the prestigious Disney/ABC Writers Program, where he got to work with the legend Sidney Poitier. And with the sale of the script for Eraser, Tony got gigs with Oliver Stone, Mel Gibson, Jerry Bruckheimer, and Will Smith. Let's welcome Tony. Unfortunately, Jeff Thorne is not here. He's working on a brand new show called The Librarian for TNT, based on the book series of the ministry. So Jeffrey will be here for Comic-Con, but unfortunately cannot come out tonight. Finally, and last but not least, is my good friend Jonathan Callan, who is a graduate from Ithaca College. We're both alums, separated by many years. He was a writer for the Prisoner webcomic, as well as Generator Rex, Slug Terror, and Ben 10 Omniverse.
I just want to correct that. I was the editor for the webcomic. I just wouldn't want to take credit for another writer's work.
Congratulations. Okay. So with that, John also has some new comic book work he's going to tell us real soon. So let us get started and tell us some truth. Now, who I am and why you should even care about me. I'm Brandon Easton. I'm a former New York City public school history and economics teacher. I worked for the Boston Herald and a variety of other magazines before I came out here. I broke into the comic scene in 2002 on the Dreamwave comic series Arcanium, and I also worked on Transformers Armada. I worked on a new Thundercats series from the Warner Brothers Animation in 2011, short-lived but fantastic show. And I also worked on episodes of Transformers Rescue Bots for the Hub. My original graphic novel, Shadow Log, won a 2013 Glyph Award for Best Writer. And I was nominated for 5 Glyph Awards for 2014 and I also was nominated for an Eisner Award. For Watson and Holmes #6, 6. Now, Watson and Holmes is a recent graphic novel comic book series which reimagines Watson and Holmes as African Americans in modern day Harlem. And it's still a procedural, but it's really cool. And I love it. And I'm currently working on some incredible stuff for Lionforge Comics down at booth 801, including the upcoming Andre the Giant graphic novel. So, talking point number 1. We have 5 very simple talking points we're going to get through. Then we'll open the floor up to your questions because it's really about what you like to know. So we pride ourselves in answering the questions. So number 1, finish what you start. One of my favorite quotes that I made up is that the literary landscape is littered with the corpses of half-finished manuscripts, or comics, or screenplays. This is a fact. I know so many people who begin but don't finish. And if you have nothing to show, you cannot make any headway. People are not buying ideas. People aren't even buying finished scripts. They're buying things from people who've proven they've had some type of audience or following. And with that being said, I open it up to my panelists. How do you feel about finishing what you start? Anybody?
Based on my personal history, I'm obviously against it. But it's very important. You can't expect, you know what, I'm just going to wait for somebody else to answer this.
He's absolutely right. In fact, I like the second part of what you said. They're looking for people who have already audiences or following. So not only do you have to start it, you have to actually do it. So it's like with the internet and everything that came with it, and the freedom and the fact that everybody could now participate at a level that maybe made you just as important as, say, a Warner Brothers, and how you could change the culture, or at least talk inside of it. That meant you have to do a lot more work. And I think that finishing what you start is now a bigger thing. You just have to finish the thing, the screenplay or the book or the treatment. Now you have to finish it, cast it, put it up, find a platform for it, market it. Finishing what you start is a huge category, and it's very rare.
Let me tell you a little story. When I was getting ready to do the Top Cow Talent Hunt, they asked for 7 pages of script. I did 22 because I had the whole idea. I didn't just have 7 pages of the idea, so I finished it and I sent it in. And I figured overperforming would be the best way to go. I'm one of the 3 winners of that year, so I figured that was the right thing to do. That was announced right before WonderCon last year. And at WonderCon last year, after that announcement came out, somebody walked, an old friend of mine, Stephen Grant, walked up and said, "Hey Hannibal, let me talk to you about something." And I started working on Watson Holmes. And then I got another call after that, like, "Hey Hannibal, I heard you're working on Watson Holmes now. What about this new fantasy novella for Stranger Comics that I actually just forgot I should put on my bio? Called Wasso, Will to Power. You want to do that with us?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?" So if you finish something, that gives people the idea they can hire you for something and you might actually finish it. Because lots of people, even if they pay, even if the check's clear, they don't finish stuff. There's 4 artists at this convention that I've paid for stuff that I don't have it, so please finish it.
I would say, so there are 2 modes that you're going to be writing in. One is the easy mode, and it's probably like if you've created something before, it's often the first thing you feel, right? Which is everything's easy, it all comes down, it all pours out, right? And then eventually you learn rules and structure, and sometimes it can feel like metal on metal because you're not in the throes of inspiration. And not to make our panel about another panel that I once saw, but I once listened to Mark Guggenheim speak, and he reminded even somebody as high up as he is, he reminded the audience that he himself had written scripts that were just like that were metal on metal, that nothing was giving, there was no inspiration, and those are the scripts he still uses as samples to this day. So the most important thing in finishing what you start is the way you feel at the beginning is not necessarily the way you feel when it's a finished product.
Also, how many people in here are novelists, by show of hands? Okay, screenwriters. All right. Anybody interested in comic book stuff? Okay, so it's a good mix of everything. Excellent. Okay, you'll notice that there's some resources underneath. Now, most people I know who are trying to break into the Hollywood writing game most people I meet are vastly uneducated about how it actually works. I think a lot of people are working on a business model that existed probably in 1962, where you just write something and somehow magically people are going to figure out that you did it without you marketing it. You are living in what's known as the post-content era, meaning that people are no longer, studios no longer have development budgets. They want to buy stuff that's already fully packaged so they can put it out on the marketplace. There's definitely money for marketing, but there's very little to no money left for development. Now, with that being said, a lot of folks who are writing spec scripts, which are sample scripts for TV shows, that are currently on the air, hopefully they should be on the air, a lot of people don't know how to write in that style. Most TV shows, particularly the half-hour sitcom, the 22-minute sitcom, a 24-minute sitcom, has a 3-act structure. But dramas now, some of them have 5 acts, some of them have 6. And if you watch CW shows, you'll notice there's so many commercials, particularly toward the end of the show, particularly on Arrow and 100, and I don't watch the originals or Vampire Diaries, so I'm imagining there's commercials at the end of those too. But there's a reason for that. The 6-act structure has drastically changed the way you write a climax for the 1-hour spec. So that's something you really need to understand. Now, where do you find this? Now, luckily, you don't have to pay for scripts anymore. You can just go download them as PDFs. One of the best sites is simplyscripts.com. Another one that I strongly recommend that I've gone to 1 billion times is a TV Writer podcast. It's a gentleman who used to live in Canada who's moved to the LA area recently. But he has interviewed over, I think, up to 50 different TV writers from every corner of the industry. Animation people, sitcom people, superhero people, even, and obviously the 1-hour drama. And you could learn so much more from that site. I strongly recommend TV Writer Podcast. It is literally a master's class in TV writing, but for absolutely free. Then there's the WGA site, which has links, which is the Writers Guild of America. It has a ton of links to various resources, programs, and also union information, if those of you who actually sell stuff, that you definitely going to want to know about. Now, the last one is the Disney Fellowship, CBS, Fox, NBC, WB, and Nickelodeon. All of these studios have writers' fellowships. Some of them are actually writing programs that help to get you staff and teach you how to be a writer in the current marketplace. Some of them are diversity-based, but not all of them are. And even the ones that are quote-unquote diversity-based, under the auspices of affirmative action, the law of affirmative action, white women also fall under the auspices of affirmative action. So it's not, and quite frankly, there's quite a few white men that go through those programs. So just because you're not a minority or a person of color does not mean you cannot apply. Really, it is the best scripts that make it through. And when you look at the alumni, you can go to the sites. It's not all people of color. It's all kinds of people who are alumni from the WB, CBS, Fox, Disney Fellowship, WB, and so forth and so on. So before we continue, are there any questions about anything we've talked about so far? In terms of your content? Yes?
I actually looked at one of the writing fellowships I was interested in and trying to put an application. But one of the requirements was that you had to have 3 recommendations from someone in the industry. Anyone in the industry.
That was probably ABC Disney, and they actually just changed that this year. It's optional and not mandatory.
The question was, some of the programs have requirements for recommendations from industry, other people in the industry for you. And she was saying, I don't know anybody in the industry. So.
Yeah, so it's like, how am I even going to have a chance?
What Brandon said about the post-content era in the internet day and age, I'm able to now, like the job I have for Legends Press is from a guy that I work with in Memphis. He grew up very close to me in Memphis, but I never met him, and he met me online. I met Brandon online. I met Jeffrey Thorne online. I met Eric online. I had no contact with these people, and now I'm able to say, hey, I'm working on this thing. And they're like, you? Oh, you might be serious about something. You actually finished something. So, I know, I'm just as surprised as you are. So I recommend if you go to places where people are making these communications, you have to find internet groups where people are talking, people who are doing serious business, and you need to be yourself. And you need to open yourself up to be able to be friends with people. Because just because you can't physically get at, I know, I'm a jackass. I know, believe me. It's so hard for me to be nice to people. But when you do this, no, for real. I hug this guy. He doesn't. So really, you just have to make yourself open to creating those kinds of connections in any way you can. Because the difference between people who get it done and people who don't get it done is just the fact that they try.
Ma'am, do you want to be a TV writer specifically?
I would love to. I mean, I write fiction because I can do it at home, going around, and it's easier, you know. So like my novel and writing short fiction.
Do you live in Los Angeles?
I live in Santa Barbara, which is not far.
I mean, yeah, that's true, but
I don't live in Los
I mean, it's interesting because Brandon lives in Long Beach, but in general, I would say you need to be close to no, that's not like a dig. You live in Long Beach, like it's not that far. No, but I know I've said before you have to live in Los Angeles, and you've said to me I don't live in Los Angeles, but it's like you have to be close enough that you can go to industry functions. It is a requirement. Now, if you want to be a different kind of writer, if you want to be a novelist or a comic book writer, that's not a requirement. But location is a requirement if you want to be a TV writer.
Yeah, and also you said that you're not comfortable being around people, and being a TV writer that you have to be in a writer's room.
Face to face.
Right.
I have no problem with that. It's the online stuff. I freeze up and I really hate it.
Online?
Yeah, I know, that's so weird.
Send me a friend request and I'll approve it.
Okay, what I did, I'll tell you, I didn't know any of these people. I just reached, well, what happened was I met Jeff through a Star Trek, he was not here. I met Jeff through a Star Trek message board years ago because I don't know how, but he was saying something about a book he wrote, which is called Star Trek Titan, which is the adventures of Captain Riker and Commander Troy, who left the Enterprise at the end of Star Trek Nemesis. So he wrote one of the books continuing that. I saw that, and I found out he was African American. And I was just like, oh my God, a black person wrote a Star Trek novel.
That's actually a big deal.
Yeah. So anyway, so I was like, dude, blah, 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 blah. So we talked, and I actually had a podcast called Writing, well, I have a podcast called Writing for Rookies. And I was just starting out, but the fact that I had at least 7 episodes of a podcast that I self-produced and paid for showed that I wasn't just some guy going to bother him. Because, you know, people bother people all the time who really aren't serious. But he was willing to take a chance, and we did one of the best podcast interviews I ever did. So then I moved out. I mean, this is way before I decided to make the decision to leave New York and move out here. But what wound up happening was, when I did come out here, it did show everybody who were naysayers. A lot of people who I knew were like, Brandon will never move out here. And it was stupid, because I moved out here right after the strike. So the writer's strike in 2007, which crippled the industry in a variety of ways. So people were like, why are you moving to LA? And I was like, well, I had this brilliant, I was like, well, I'll move when it's destroyed, so I'll be there when they build it back up. And it didn't quite work that way. But what you have to do is not be afraid to just reach out. As long as you have something, I will say this, it does help to have something to show.
Yeah, I've been working hard. I've been working very diligently, actually, finishing what I started.
Right.
I do have finished pieces. I actually have been published. My short fiction has been published.
Gotcha.
That's hard to do. It is.
Right.
It is. And you get, I've been through all the rejections and stuff like that. So this is something I'm very serious about.
Well, if you have done fiction, you mentioned like you've done a lot of short fiction. One of the things we always talk about is creating an anthology of a series of short stories in a universe it's all from one universe, but it's a bunch of short stories within that universe. Almost like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where you have this big umbrella, and you have a whole TV show based on that umbrella, and then I'm sorry, and then you have a bunch of movies. But I know a lot of people who have created a universe and then done a self-published novel with all those short stories within that said universe. So what that does is it shows that you have a continuity of focus, and you're able to actually think bigger because you're able to create a universe of semi-connected stories. So I would suggest doing that, and then actually getting it printed. And you can worry about the publisher and all that stuff later on, but definitely get that stuff done and put it out there. And it'll make a difference, because a lot of people I know who've done it have moved on to other things. You're welcome. All right, the transmedia marketplace. Well, a lot of times you're hearing this phrase, transmedia, so forth and so on, but a lot of us don't know what that means. So, what is the transmedia marketplace, folks? Let's talk about it. Deeply. Oh, wait.
Like Eric said, the playing field is different. That I, sitting in my bedroom, can design a website, truthfully in many ways better than Warner Brothers can, because I know the UI guy. But anyway, don't be against it. Don't be. That if you're determined about getting your message out, there's a lot of avenues to that. So, if you're writing fiction, you can publish that fiction on Fictionaut, you can publish that fiction on your own site, you can do a lot of things to reach out there. If you're creating video, Spirit knows, Vimeo, is that the way you pronounce it, Brandon? Vimeo? Vimeo. I never get that right. YouTube and so on and so forth. So, whatever you're making, there is now a place for it. And the only difference between somebody who gets it heard and somebody who doesn't is how hard they pimp that message. So, get out there like Exhibit and put it on the stroller, basically.
I want to say something about the changing media landscape. I was downstairs looking at the different booths from people like DC, with the properties. I'm fascinated by the way there's been this consolidation with the big media companies. There's only 6 studios. They have copyrights to protect. Warner Brothers particularly has been, to the point of shooting themselves in the foot, has been very conservative, protecting those trademarks they own. It's going to make them stupid. It's going to make them dinosaurs in many key ways. The people in this room, we're not necessarily dinosaurs. We're like clever and smart and fleet of foot. And I think to myself that I'm never going to, I may never make that giant $400 million Thor movie or something of my dreams. But I don't have to now because we talk about the rise of the internet. The one thing I wanted to say to you about before about this whole internet thing and getting out of your room. When you're walking in the airport and you step on the people mover and suddenly you just go like that? It's like joining the conversation. That internet is out there flowing right past your house. And if you step on it, and suddenly you're in it, and there are like-minded people who will make content with you, again, that will be nimble and fleet of foot that Warner Brothers and Disney and those guys cannot make. And so they will be exploiting the transmedia marketplace over here. They will have TV shows, games, toys, shirts, movies, all integrated, in this vast holistic system of evil. But those of us in this room, we clever people, we will be putting out blogs, putting out websites, using this new video technology. Everybody has a phone. We were just down in Belize, in Central America, where most of the kids down there don't have computers, but every man, woman, and child in Belize has a cell phone. And we were trying to preach to them this gospel that if you've got a cell phone, if you can make pictures and put text with those pictures, you can make a comic or you can tell a story. That's the whole point. You don't care. You don't necessarily have to be able to draw. You don't have to be able to, you don't have to have access to a computer even these days to be a storyteller, to be sitting around that international fire, that campfire, telling your stories. So I want to advocate to people that what the transmedia marketplace means to me in this room is each of us can make nimble, fleet of foot content that goes like this in a way that dinosaurs can't. Each one of us can make videos. Each one of us can make video blogs. Each one of us can tell little stories. It has never been cheaper to shoot, edit, and put out a storyboard, whether you choose to make it superheroes, whether you choose to make it fantasy, cosplay, anything you want. Whether you just want to tell a little story about somebody in their room. But we found, Erica and I found, for instance, we've been in Hollywood, each of us 25 years, doing the official route with the dinosaurs. And that was cool, and it is cool, but it also occurred to us that comics, for instance, were a low barrier to entry medium. And so we chose that for putting out our science fiction story that a lot of the studios told us was too big to do. This is Disney telling us our thing is too big. Or, okay. So we have a comic book. We put it out there. We're winning some awards. We're getting some traction. We did it on the internet. We send the pages around. We'll talk about that later. I just want to say that to me, the transmedia marketplace means the the people in this room have more power than we realize. Because I know every one of y'all has a phone. Most of you have, who doesn't have a computer? All right, thank you. And each one of those computers has more computing power in it than NASA had when they sent a man to the moon.
Yep.
What's the 286?
Yes.
I'm kidding.
I'm just saying, so the question is, what are you going to do with it? I just want to ask people to think in different ways and think that you are the studio, you are the one pumping content, even if you do it every week, even if it's just your blog, even if it's just your little video thing. So to me, that's what transmedia means.
You really want me to go? Yeah. I mean, you know my feelings on this. Transmedia is bullshit. So traditionally, transmedia is this idea that while you're watching the Lost TV show, you can tweet about the Lost TV show, and you can read the Lost comic book, and you can play the Lost video game, and all of those things are very fine. I'm sure you can do very good work in any one of those mediums. Spin-off and tie-in stuff can often be really good, as you mentioned our buddy Jeff Thorne, who writes Star Trek novels. But write a novel. Like, write a novel for its sake. Like, do a comic book for its sake. Don't do a comic book so, you know, you can get your movie sold. What's the thing I'm trying to say here? The thing is what it is. You know what it's supposed to be. And this is all just the trappings that corporate people think about. And we're not corporate people, we're artists. What we do is just make art. And you'll know what the medium is, and yes, we're nimble, and we're fleet of foot, and you'll figure it out. So, you know, this is not the kind of thing that I worry about.
Yeah, another factor is never ever follow a trend. You know, the sparkly vampire thing is pretty much run its course. If you want to do that, you can, but find another spin on it. You know what I mean? Everything you see in the marketplace has probably been through a development cycle of 18 months to 3 years. So whatever you're seeing is actually a view into the past. Just like when we look into space and the stars you see is light from stars years ago, the shows you're watching is the light, or the movies and the novels are the light from things that were created months ago. So think of it that way. Always be looking for something to create. And I mean, first of all, your story is your story. Find something within you that's worth telling. All the things that really stick with us, and if you really think about it, all the things that really stick with us are things that resonate with something inside. I'll give you an example. Everything I write in some way is, not literally, but there's a little bit of Blade Runner in everything I write. And I'll tell you why. Because in that final scene, when Rutger Hauer was on the rooftop with Harrison Ford, he says, "I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I've watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate. Now, all those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain." Like, that is what with me forever, because it says so much about the human condition. You know? That, to me, is what I'm talking about. There's a part of me that feels like people don't really get what I'm saying. Sometimes they haven't lived my life. And just like Batty dying, all my moments, all those memories are going to be lost in time. So I try to write, a lot of my stories deal with someone dealing with the memory and figuring out how to conquer the memory and then move on. And because in my life, you know, my grandfather meant a lot to me, and because of his experiences in World War II, and then when he got out as a longshoreman in Baltimore, the whole 9 yards. So those memories, those experiences, they come with you. And when everybody here has a unique story, everybody here has a tragedy and a triumph. Look at that and then build around that. You know, don't worry about, you know, vampires or True Blood and all this stuff. And, you know, just think of something that really matters to you and then build a universe around that. Whatever it might be. Like George Lucas was like, "Hey, I want to get out of my hometown someday." Guess what? That was what the whole first part from Tatooine. I want to get out of my hometown. I don't like it. How many of us have said that? You know, that's why Star Wars Resonance. That's Shotgun's looking at the two suns and the music plays. That's what I'm talking about. Those moments will inform your writing. And this is more about content than about idea generation. But I really want you to think about that. Because if you're building it based on something else, you're going to create a carbon copy. And that's the last thing we need in pop culture right now. And I think somebody had their hand. Yes, sir. I can't hear you. Speak up.
Like dealing with like transmedia and how technology is approaching the people instead of having to approach technology. So like Warner Brothers, and you're referring to them as like dinosaurs. So I guess, first of all, I think it's 100% correct. I think if you have $5,000, $8,000, you can make a movie, like a serious movie, and it can look very nice. I mean, you can do a lot with very little, like we were saying too, with the iPhone stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is that why should people be pursuing Warner Brothers? Why? I mean, what is the deal? Like, because I know a lot of people who work very hard, and it seems like, is it because people just look at independent work as less, and if it's not being hosted by Warner Brothers or something, that I'm not going to spend the money to go and take part of it? You know, because if you're going to put in the work, you should get the return. And like you're saying, go and make a following, generate a following, and then leave that to go and work for someone else? Or, I mean, what is the purpose right now? Is it, I guess, this medium?
Yeah, go ahead. What I think is weird is you internalize the mechanisms that you grew up with, I think, right? So it's like you grow up, you watch movies, you want to be Spielberg. Spielberg grew up watching movies, you want to be John Ford, right? You are always going to be looking for the approval of those gatekeepers of a different generation, right? By the time I got out here, everybody I worshipped that made their career was already broken. And my path to breaking in was completely different. You know, they say breaking into Hollywood is like breaking out of prison. As soon as one guy figures out how to do it, they patch up that hole, you know? So I think we're always looking for the approval of the past model. That's what I got.
Yeah, but it's not.
Go ahead.
Yeah, please.
But it's not just about approval. I mean, we all go. Oh, I'm sorry. We all go to films. We all have grown up with this. We all dream in the dark. That's a thing. Who wouldn't want to make that big picture? I'm one of those guys who broke out of prison and literally broke into show business and sort of won the lottery and had a picture produced by Warner Brothers, and it really changed my life. That was all great, particularly when my dad and mom could sit in the theater and see my name big on the screen. That's wonderful. But that was in an environment 20 years ago when each of the studios made far more movies than they do today. That was actually before DVD revenue blew up the movie market and made movies so lucrative over the past 10, 15 years. Now DVD is over. DVD is dead, and again, there's this, they're receding and shrinking their business model to making 5 movies a year, and they're all tentpoles, they're all Spider-Man all the time. What's an original creator going to do? But I see kids on skateboards making these amazing $5,000 videos that will get them a deal with Warner Brothers before those of us sitting in our rooms writing great art. It really is something, the environment is changing. And it's not just a matter of approval, is all I'm saying. Of course, we'd all like to write our name real large on the culture. I wanted to be the Beatles. I mean, I just did. You know, I'm that old that I wanted to be that big. But there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat. And artists, hopefully, anybody here consider themselves an artist? I mean, we're all artists.
Hopefully all of you.
I think an artist, the definition of an artist is an artist will find a way. If you give an artist a rock, that artist will find a way to make their mark. So, please.
Well, you know, when we're talking about transmedia, we're talking about different ways to tell stories, basically, which is important, but we have to look to the past, and history tells us a lot. I mean, we had some great impresarios, Peter Brook, Joseph Papp, Master P, Barry Gordy. They all used what they had right there to tell their stories, because nobody was looking for them. And that's what we're talking about when we say transmedia. I mean, maybe, Jonathan's absolutely right. There's no sense in thinking about one thing being all these things. Just do the best novel you can do. Be the best novelist. And then that thing may take off like it did for that woman up, where was she, Utah? And now she has these huge movies, Stephanie Myers. I'm sure J.K. Rowling wasn't thinking about the films. She was trying to make, she was trying to feed her children. And she was using the medium she had, a pen and a paper, and she got down to business. I think there's nothing wrong with trying to visualize your property bigger. I think there's nothing wrong with trying to shoot for the stars and go for your dreams. But if you are a musician and you have access to something that can help you tell your story, and you can send it mobile or sell it out the back of your trunk like Master P did, and then hopefully that picks up and that trend picks up and sweeps you into something bigger, that's great. But if you distract yourself with all these things, you may harm what essentially is really what needs to be done for you to tell a really great story. As simply as possible, as quick as possible, and as best you can.
I 100% agree with that.
I agree too, but in response to that question in particular, let me tell you a story. Many years ago, I was reading this book called Battle Pope, which was this incredibly raunchy book about this violent guy having sex and punching people and hanging out with Jesus who was confused and he was insane. And about this book label called Funkotron. I just like walking around saying Funkotron, Funkotron. And I didn't think anything of it. And then this guy who wrote it, named Robert Kirkman, you may have heard of him. He went on to do some other things, and those things became popular. And then he sold out and went to the big names, and then everybody started to know his name. Now he has a television show. Why chase Warner Brothers? Because every pay-for-hire thing that you do is advertising. I won the Top Cow Talent Hunt, for example, and I sold more copies of Artifacts than half the indie friends that I have. But more people got to see my name. So when I come out with Wasso Will to Power, when I come out with Project Wildfire, when I come out with Watson and Holmes, people will be like, oh wait, I remember that name. And it's advertising. It's not necessarily a validation. It's not necessarily that I want, oh, please give me your approval, oh Lordy. It's not like it. It's about expanding my own personal brand. So the more times you see Hannibal Tabu's name, oh, he's on CBR, oh, he's on Image Comics, oh, he's here, then the more people think, oh, that's a name I can trust. Maybe I should
brother in the post office too.
No, I straightened that out. That warrant got cleared up. And those are some of the things that George Clooney talks about all the time. I'll do a movie for the studios, I'll do a movie for me. Do a movie for the studios, do a movie for me, and I'm gonna make a whole lot of money with these supermodels. It's just a way of doing the business.
A good example would be Issa Rae. And she did a web series called Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. Fantastic series. It ran for 2 seasons. And then she ran out of money, did a Kickstarter, got way more money than she thought. She finished everything, right? In the meantime, she got the attention of Miss Shonda Rhimes, who created Grey's Anatomy, Private Practice, and Scandal. So what wound up happening was Shonda met with her and said, look, you did your own thing. It's awesome. You deserve to be on television. Now she has a development deal at ABC and HBO. So it's an example of what I'm talking about. For example, another thing, the Canon Rebel T3i, it's like right there, right? That camera, I got that on Amazon for $500. I also borrowed a lighting rig from a good friend of mine that also cost $500. So if I had $1,000, I would have been able to get a lighting rig and a camera. I shot a documentary. That documentary is coming out May 9th. Was that nobody gave me permission, nobody validated me. I said, just like Issa Rae, Issa Rae, she said, well, what's the 2 worst things to be in the world? Black and awkward, right? So she made a web series about that. And then I wrote, and I said, I read this article in Bleeding Cool a couple years ago, and it said that Marvel and DC only hired 2.4% black people total, like 2.4, that's not even a person. Right? So I was like, I wonder why, and then you go to the panel and say, why don't you hire black writers? We don't know where they're in. So I was like, all right, let me make a documentary listening to people I know. So next time they say that, you could be like, oh, on my phone, well, here's a documentary. Because I was just angry with the answer, because it was disingenuous.
Wait,
but,
you said that 25 years ago.
Well, and they'll say it 25 years from now. But the point ultimately is that nobody can tell you what you want to create. There's been so, I wish I had internet access. It costs $80 in here. But if I had internet access, I would show you 5 short films that all cost under $5,000 that all got picked up for big studio deals. Okay? One of them was called Panic Attack. It came out of Chile. One was called The Raven, and Mark Wahlberg's company. It was shot in downtown LA. And it was about cops and superpowered people versus drones. And it was shot with no money, CGI, beautiful looking stuff. There was something that Lucasfilm picked up called Raha. It was R''HA. And it was a guy in Eastern Europe who did it by himself. And it looks better than some of the special effects in the big budget movies. And you can look it up. It's called R''HA, Raha.
What about Neil Blomkamp?
Oh, Blomkamp. Okay. District 9 was originally called something in Joburg.
Yes.
Attack on, what was it called?
Johanna.
Yeah, the original, what District 9 was actually a 5-minute short film that Neil Blomkamp did, and then Peter Jackson's people saw it. And it was something in Joburg, Johannesburg, and it became District 9. So my point being is that everybody in here, with minimal investment, definitely under $1,200, could create something pretty decent, particularly if you get to know CGI creators who are looking to do some work for free.
Tools are easy to get, talent is hard to find.
Can we just address that for a second? Because, nothing frightens me more than the prospect of everybody in this room making their own videos and filling up the internet with a bunch of crap.
Seriously, get out of the way. We don't need the competition.
But the flip side is if we're all going to be the little furry mammals that are clever and quick, then it behooves us all also to be better than the person sitting next to you at your craft, right? Whatever that happens to be. If you're going to be telling a story, yeah, really, look at the person next to you. They should fail, you should succeed. So reach out and hug someone, exactly. So that, I'm saying, seriously, the ability to tell a story still matters. There's really boiling it down to telling tales around the campfire. There are some people who come in and tell you, man, I have cancer, it's horrible, and you're like, and you fall asleep. There are others who say, when you get one of those hangnails, and I'm sitting there, and suddenly you're captivated, and but that's down to the craft of the storyteller, and that's you again. That's not your tool, that's not whether you have internet access or not. It's also working and learning your storytelling craft. So this great democracy of talent creators also makes it more difficult to stand out. So my message to you is distinguish yourself.
Yeah, it's a meritocracy.
Yes.
Really.
Make it America, hopefully.
All right, number 3, the spec script. The spec script is a sample based on an existing program and an original pilot. Those are the 2 things you really need to go out if you're trying to break into the industry as a TV writer. The TV writer is really one of the most powerful people out there right now because eventually they become showrunners. The biggest shows of the last few years, you also know the names of the showrunners, whether it's Breaking Bad, Mad Men, Walking Dead has a revolving door of showrunners, but it's all under the control of Robert Kirkman. But the bottom line is, your weaponry to attack this industry is the best spec script you could possibly come up with, preferably a show that people know, but not everybody else is specking. Because everybody expects Grey's Anatomy. Everybody expects CSI or Law & Order. I don't even know if Law & Order is actually still being renewed. Are they still making new episodes of any Law & Order?
Yes.
The sex one? So, sex crimes, I should say. Anyway, too soon. I'm sorry. Anyway, now your spec script, there are a bunch of people out there who are charlatans about evaluation, but one of the best spec script readers out there is a woman by the name of Jen Grisanti. She is probably the best at it. She's had a long career in Hollywood, and what she could do is take a look at it and tell you how to fix it, okay? But your original pilot, that's a whole different ball game. I have pilots, but they're not that great. I know that, but my specs are pretty strong. So, for example, I'm specking Arrow. Then I'm going to use that to enter a bunch of programs because Arrow has finally gotten hot enough people know it, but not everybody can grasp that storytelling style. Luckily, I'm a comic book writer. It's based on a comic book. Bam. Whatever show that you might like right now, for example, what's new? Dallas would be a good show to spec. Walking Dead is still pretty good. There's actually a website that tells you which shows are good ones to spec. And you can find it on Google if you look up TV specs, what's hot, something like that. And it'll pop up if you got internet access right now. For feature-length movies, it's a little bit trickier because studios don't have, as I said before, a development budget. So people aren't really buying original script ideas. When you think about all the movies that you've heard of in the last 5 years, how many big budget blockbusters have been original concepts? That wasn't Pixar. Yeah, I love Pacific Rim, but people here were like, well, it looks like Power Rangers. And I'm like, no, it's not Power Rangers. But the bottom line is, you need to have something that, you need to realize that your feature-length script might not go out for a sale, but it'll be a perfect calling card that'll get you work for something else. And it's really good to come in. I would say low-budget drama will get you a lot more respect than a big-budget thing because nobody, if they don't know who you are going to give you money to produce something that costs $200 million to make. Also, for comic books, for those of you interested in breaking into the comic book industry, nobody reads scripts in the comic book industry. You need to have a completed comic book, 24 pages, or 96, that's a full graphic novel, fully colored and lettered if you want to have colors. It could also be in black and white. This is extremely important. Nobody in comics reads scripts.
I mean, Does somebody want to go first? I think the thing that I would stress here, which I've stressed before, and I'd hate to keep giving you guys pleasant news, but your sample probably isn't good enough. I mean, my sample's not good enough, or I would be staffed on a live action show already. It's not as though this business eschews talent when it can find it. If you really make something great, they will kick down your door to find you. And you still have to be good at marketing and socializing and the politics of it. You have to find your way in. But the ultimate thing is the product. And if you're not where you want to be, you might have to take a look at yourself, like a long, hard look, and say, okay, how can I do a better sample than this one?
I would also say watch classic movies, the ones you might think are boring. I mean, the other day I sat through My Dinner with Andre, which is, you know, it's a fantastic film, but it's not the typical Hollywood high-octane film. Watch the classics. What we define as a classic, if you got Hulu Plus, they have something called the Criterion Collection. Go through the Criterion Collection. If something sticks out to you, watch it. Because the Criterion Collection are the finest films in human history preserved. Watch it. American movies are not always the best examples. The international scene, particularly the early Russian cinema and early Italian cinema, can teach you a lot about storytelling. You watch The Bicycle Thief, there's very little language in it, very little dialogue. It's all the cinema of pictures. Anything by Sergei Eisenstein, particularly Battleship Potemkin, the cinema of the language of cinema, the language of visuals. It will teach you how to tell stories with pictures, only with pictures. Trust me. Also, if you want to watch a great film and learn about visual storytelling, there's a film called La Jetée by Chris Martin. La Jetée was remade into a film called 12 Monkeys. It's the same story, but guess what? You know what's so interesting about La Jetée? La Jetée is all still photographs. The same story, imagine the story of 12 Monkeys told in still photographs. That's what La Jetée was. Watch that. Warren Ellis, who was one of my favorite comic book writers on earth, he gave a great interview where he said that most comic book writers overwrite their scenes. They put word balloons over the art that's telling you exactly what's already happening.
Thank you.
If you're writing, don't overwrite your scenes. If there's a rocket ship in the background, and this is for anything, you don't need to say, boy, there's a rocket ship in the background. Say something else. Seriously, it moves the story forward. Really, writers like to write. My first comic book was Arcania, and I overwrote that book by about 600 words. Now, for a comic book, 600 words is a lot of words. If I had just trusted my art team a little bit more, I think my first comic book series wouldn't have got canceled halfway through its run. Because I didn't trust, and I didn't know enough. Unless you're doing novels, and even sometimes novels can be a little bit too verbose, believe it or not. You know, look at War and Peace for Christ's sake. But the point, I'm just kidding, it's great. The point being is that trust, if you're doing cinema, trust that you have the ability to tell the story in pictures. If you have trouble doing that, look at your photographs, the gallery of photographs in your camera. Then write one sentence describing what is happening. Keep doing it. This was something I learned in film school. Take a book of photographs and write a sentence about what's going on. Once you do that enough, you will start to learn how to tell a picture based on a photograph in your head. Tell a story based on the photographs in your head and arrange that in a sequential narrative. That makes you a better storyteller. It really works.
Oh yeah, there's a really good Mamet book. What is it on film? On directing,
yeah.
Where he talks about how to choose images. It's actually even better for comic books than it is for film. Because he's talking about film as though it's a static medium, but comic books actually are a static medium. So I highly recommend that book.
What's the name of the book again?
On directing.
Okay,
Also read On Acting for a laugh, because he hates actors.
And while we're on the subject of the word on writing by Stephen King is my Bible.
Yes.
It is, the first half of the book is his autobiography, but the second half of the book is a class, a creative writing class as taught by Stephen King. You will learn more from that one section of the book. It's about that thick, right? Than you will learn in any MFA program. The man is simply a genius of creative writing. It tells you about what's important, and it goes back to what I said, take something from your personal life and put it in your story. They say, Stephen King even admits that, the Tommy novels, and I think Needful Things was about his cocaine and alcohol abuse, because his cocaine and alcohol abuse gave him the ability to stay up late to write, but it took something, a piece of his soul away, just like in the Tommy Knockers and Needful Things. So he used his own life, his own demons to fuel, to be the engine for some of his best storytelling. So think about that. Okay? Now, with the comic book thing, we didn't get too much into it, but a lot of people who are writers always say artists flake out, they don't finish what they start. The best way to cure that is to pay them. No, seriously, I'm not kidding about it. You need to pay them. Because I've had people who said they were going to do work for me with the promise that, oh, when it comes out, I'll pay them. But that's like, hey, let's go work at Walmart, and if we make money that year, in December, they'll give you a check. That's not how it works. You know, you want to get paid for the work you do. So does a comic book artist. The sequential art is difficult. Very few people can do it, and very few people can do it well. And that's really important. We talked about the comic book.
I agree that paying people is very important. Also, getting a fairly ironclad contract. You can Google for a lot of contract structures because, for example, I paid a guy $200 to work on these character sketches, and he was like, okay, great, that's fine. I've never done anything this great. And he does one of them, and then he had an existential crisis, and he moved to Utah, lived with his sister. And then he came back, but he still hasn't finished my stuff. That was 5 years ago. So I'm out my money, but I hadn't signed a contract with him, so it's not like I can really say a lot. It is important to be paid. The difference between an amateur and a professional is the difference between somebody who's easier to hire later and somebody who people are like, oh, well, you know, he's just doing a hobby. If you do it as a profession, if you do it where you're, like Tony said, developing a craft, it's not going to be a hobby to you. It's going to be a grind. It's what's important to you and what you wake up to do. So it's got to be the same way for artists. If we don't respect that as writers, then we're kind of screwing ourselves out of the game. You know?
Questions? I saw some hands going. Yes, sir.
This is going back to, I think, point 3 with the specs, because, you know, you hear some things from executives, I've heard some things from representation, and I do want to hear specifically from writers, because it's always different. The executives will swear by specs every time. Representation seems to have no interest in anybody writing a spec ever again, and that's, when I say spec, obviously I mean the, sample episode.
Right.
So I'm just wondering what, obviously you say you need both,
yes.
But do you see that changing? Because it seems like interviews that I read and listen to with showrunners say they don't even want to read a spec anymore. They want pilots.
Right, so that's why you need to have both. Because there will be people that record. See, this is the trick. They put the microphone in front of various people, and you're going to get certain answers that are tailored from various people. Whereas if you look at the length and breadth of the actual industry, you're going to get a lot of different answers. And they're all right. That's the trick. It's like no one's actually wrong. Having a good spec is great for programming. It's also great to show that you can write in the voice of another show. But you better have some pilots. And I'd say have 2 or 3 pilots done that are really strong. Because people are going to want to see, okay, fine, you can mimic, but can you create?
Yeah,
so have both.
I'd say at this point, if you're looking for a percentage, your percentage should be like 70-30. Like 70% pilots, 30% a good solid spec. But honestly, that solid spec is there for rare occasions. Or fellowships, which are a great way to break in.
Okay, now the final one is one that people don't really talk too honestly about, but it's something that needs to be said because I've seen, in the time I've been here, I've seen some very strange and magical things and also some reprehensible things. Attitudes in the industry. This is a very small industry. People talk. People get drunk together. That's what they make it. They get drunk together and they talk. Whatever it is your bag is, whatever you have a problem with, whatever infuriates you, leave it at home. Because if it gets out you have a certain attitude about this, or a certain attitude about that, it can come back to haunt you. I have a friend who's fairly homophobic, right? Everybody knows that Hollywood has quite a large gay population in the higher echelons. Nothing wrong with that, it's just a fact of the matter. I'm not making a judgment, it's just a fact, right? So it's probably not a good idea to go around, using words like faggot and dyke and all this, because some people still, there's usually dudes who do this, they're still stuck in this like frat boy mentality. You gotta leave that alone. And I mean that because you never know who's listening and you never know who you're going to offend. Now, I'm not a PC person at all. I usually say it how it is, but I'm also not going to ever disrespect another human being for any reason on earth, unless I'm disrespecting first, which changes the whole game. The thing is, I'm a very nice person, but it's like, I will never go out to hurt anybody's feelings. A lot of people don't seem to have it, and I don't know whether it's a generational thing, because I feel like a lot of people who come up behind me don't have those same buffers where they say things, they do things, and I'm just like, dude, you don't say that kind of thing. What's wrong with you, man? Either you want to get beat up or you just want to get ostracized. So be very careful about what you say, because people remember what you do. People remember if you pay attention to them. People remember if you're honest with them. You know, for me, I'm a big baseball fan. Now, in the future, if I ever become a showrunner, someone will probably do research to say, if you want to get on his good side, talk about baseball. But, you know, stuff like that works. But don't come to me talking about, for example, the Red Sox, because I'm from Baltimore, and I hate everything in Boston. So, you know, it's like, just learn about who's out there. Learn about the people who are out there. Like, every showrunner has a thing, but you don't want to be fake, and you don't want to be, you know, like, if you don't want to be a racist, sexist, homophobic jackass. Stop that. You know, leave it at home. Like, there are people who are like, you know, Archie Bunker show, you know, All in the Family. If you ever want to see how to write, you know, racist characters, but actually make it good, watch All in the Family. Look at the first 6 seasons. One of the greatest shows in the history of mankind. Okay, Norman Lear is a genius. I have patterned so much in my mind around what Norman Lear did back in the 70s and early 80s. And that's what I'm trying to say. My attitude is based on the reality that people have feelings. Everyone has feelings, and I try not to hurt them. And I would say, just take a little bit of decency is a short supply. You know, take a little bit of decency out into the world, because in this industry, people talk. And if somebody comes along, and even though there's a lot of racists and sexists and homophobes in the industry, most people aren't. And if they hear, oh, this guy, he uses the N-word all the time. This white guy, he's, you know. And people are like, what's wrong with him? You know, hey, I'm not hiring him. You know, or somebody calls every gay, say, oh, this is so gay. This is so gay. Oh, I don't like this. This is gay. Oh, this is what faggots do. Guess what? You don't get hired. The word spreads. So attitude, no one talks about this on panels, but this needs to be said, because I deal with it all the time in the comments industry, especially in the comments industry. You know, it's time to grow up as a society. It's the 21st century. It needs to start feeling like it.
Yeah, that's true. Can I say something?
Please.
I think we talk about attitudes. I think some people's attitudes come from the fear that they think somebody's going to take or steal something from them. Like they have presented the ring to Frodo Baggins. To it like they're God. You're not going to make somebody's day with your stuff. You know what I mean? What you're there is to represent yourself well, meaning yourself well, and then they'll sort of put that attitude on your work. Your work could be great, but if your attitude sucks, they'll never see it. They'll never see it through, you know, the work through. So you have to remember that there are very few people out there that have been waiting for you to come in so they can take your idea. And you're there to sort of open up and give yourself over to the moment, which is important, and sort of display yourself. You don't have to feel like, I wonder what they're saying, and I wonder if I'll look. Just show up and, you know, put on a decent halfway clean t-shirt and, you know, just be open to it. But it really does. I've seen people who really already think so highly of their stuff. Like I say, they're not going to get anywhere. They're already coming with all this attitude like, well, you know, I just don't want people to, you know, we know everybody's trying it, and you're too paranoid to be in this industry. Publish it yourself and see if you can sell it. You really need to be open to the process, and that most people are really decent, and they don't have time to take your idea. They have too many others that they've already bought or have of their own to mine.
And if you're concerned about theft, your attitude, keyword, needs to be steal all you want, I'll make more. Because an artist makes more.
Is going to be from the artist and the independent creators perspective. We've got Robert Roach, I believe Danny Dixon, Dale, should I say Dale Wilson? Wilson. Dale Wilson's coming up. A couple other people are coming up. So for those of you who are interested in the artistic side, hang out. And thank you so much.